You aren't exhausted because of your workload or the friction of a busy schedule. That heaviness behind your eyes every morning is actually the silent, crushing cost of maintaining a version of yourself that was designed solely to be palatable to people who do not truly see you. You have spent years meticulously editing your personality, sanding down the sharp edges of your truth to fit into a social architecture that rewards compliance over character. This is the invisible labor of the mask, a constant, high-stakes surveillance of your own words and gestures to ensure you remain safe, agreeable, and entirely unremarkable. You have become a secondary character in your own life, performing a script you didn't write for an audience that isn't even paying attention. The self-care and rest you've been prescribed are useless because they treat the symptoms of a burnout that isn't physical, but existential. You don't need a vacation. You need a revolution within your own psyche to stop the slow-motion suicide of your true nature. You've been told that being good means being harmless, but in reality, you've just been conditioned to be a coward who calls their fear virtue. It is time to stop polishing the bars of your cage and finally look at the man who is suffocating beneath the persona. You have been given the wrong map for your entire life, and the reason you feel so lost is that the person you've been protecting doesn't actually exist. We must deconstruct why the modern world rewards this self-erasure and how it leaves you weaker than your ancestors ever were. In our current landscape, safety is equated with moral goodness, and those who fit in are praised for their stability. However, this stability is a mask for a deep internal rot that Friedrich Nietzsche identified as ressentiment. When you suppress your true desires and your natural aggression to appear virtuous, those energies do not simply vanish. They turn inward, curdling into a bitter resentment that poisons your perspective and drains your will to power. You become a person who is incapable of saying no, and because you cannot say no, your yes has absolutely no value. You are not a good person. You are merely a harmless person, and there is a vast, terrifying difference between the two. The harmless man is a victim waiting for a predator, while the truly good man is the one who has a sword and knows how to use it, but chooses to keep it sheathed. By perfecting the mask of the peaceful citizen, you have effectively disarmed yourself in the one place where you need protection most, the battlefield of your own soul. Consider the case of the successful ghost, a man who has achieved every metric of societal victory, yet feels an inexplicable void at the center of his chest. He has the career, the family, and the reputation, but he feels as though he is watching his life through a thick pane of glass. This is because it is the mask that received the promotions. It is the mask that received the praise, and it is the mask that is loved by his peers. The real man beneath the surface is starving for a single moment of genuine recognition, but he is terrified to show his face because he fears that the truth will destroy the fragile world he has built. He is a prisoner of his own success, trapped in a loop of maintenance where every day is spent polishing the very bars that keep him captive. This is the ultimate failure of the persona. It works so well that it eventually replaces the person. You reach a point where you can no longer remember who you were before you started trying to please everyone else. And that realization is the beginning of a profound and necessary crisis. To understand how to escape this architecture of the self, we must look to the insights of Carl Jung and his concept of the persona. Jung argued that the persona is a functional necessity for social life, a way for us to interact with the world without revealing our most vulnerable depths. However, he warned that the danger arises when we begin to identify with the mask, forgetting that it is a social construct rather than a biological reality. The persona is a collective identity, a slice of the universal mind that we adopt to fit into the structures of society. When you spend your entire life polishing this slice, you neglect the vast and fertile territory of your personal unconscious. You become a one-dimensional figure in a three-dimensional world, a caricature of a human being who lacks the depth and the shadow required for true resilience. Jung observed that the person who identifies too strongly with their persona is always prone to a sudden and violent collapse, as the suppressed parts of the psyche eventually demand to be heard. The first law of this psychological prison is the law of functional deception. We build the mask to survive our childhood, learning early on which parts of our personality earn us love and which parts earn us punishment. We prune ourselves like bonsai trees, cutting away the wild and unpredictable branches to fit into the small pots of our families and schools. By the time we reach adulthood, we have become so proficient at this deception that we deceive even ourselves. We believe the mask is the face. We think that our politeness is our character and our compliance is our strength. This law states that the more successful your deception becomes, the further you drift from the source of your own vitality. You are living on borrowed energy, fueled by the approval of others rather than the fire of your own conviction. This is why you are exhausted. It takes an incredible amount of willpower to sustain a lie that has become as large as a life. The second law is the law of internal decay, which governs the fate of everything you have hidden behind the mask. This hidden territory is what Jung called the shadow, the collection of all the traits, impulses, and desires that you have deemed unacceptable. Many people believe that by ignoring the shadow, they can make it disappear. But the opposite is true. The suppressed parts of your soul do not die. They rot. They become twisted versions of themselves, manifesting as sudden outbursts of anger, deep-seated anxiety, or a persistent sense of meaninglessness. The law of internal decay dictates that anything you refuse to integrate into your conscious life will eventually turn against you. The aggression you hide becomes a passive-aggressive bitterness that ruins your relationships. The ambition you deny becomes a crushing sense of inadequacy. The only way to stop the decay is to open the door to the basement of your mind and confront the monsters you have been breeding in the silence of your own denial. This internal struggle is precisely what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the herd morality that dominates our era. The herd demands that you remain small, predictable, and weak, for anything that stands out is a threat to the collective peace. You have been conditioned to value the safety of the group over the sovereignty of the individual, and the persona is the tool of that conditioning. Nietzsche urged the individual to reclaim their will to power, not by dominating others, but by dominating the parts of themselves that are content to be slaves. He understood that the path to true greatness requires a ritualistic destruction of the social mask. You must be willing to be the villain in someone else's story, if that is what it takes to be the hero in your own. The price of authenticity is the loss of the easy path, but the reward is the reclamation of a life that is actually yours. You must choose between the comfort of the crowd and the lonely heights of your own potential. To begin the transformation, you must engage in a radical protocol of shadow integration. This starts with a brutal inventory of the traits you despise in others, for those are often the very traits you have suppressed in yourself. When you feel a flash of intense judgment towards someone who is loud, or selfish, or aggressive, you are actually seeing a reflection of a part of your own soul that is crying out for expression. The goal is not to become those things, but to reclaim the energy that is trapped within them. You must learn to look at your own capacity for darkness without flinching, recognizing that your power lies in your ability to be dangerous while choosing to be controlled. This is the process of becoming a whole human being, rather than a fragmented social unit. You must start small, by speaking a truth that is uncomfortable, or by setting a boundary that might disappoint someone. Each act of authenticity is a crack in the calcified tomb of the persona, and each crack allows a little more light to reach the person beneath. The discomfort of this change cannot be overstated, for as you begin to shed the mask, the people around you will react with confusion and perhaps even hostility. They liked the version of you that was predictable and easy to manage, and they will interpret your new boundaries as a betrayal. You must be prepared to lose the connections that were built on the foundation of your compliance. This is the ritualistic destruction of your old life, a necessary fire that clears the ground for something more durable to grow. The cumulative effect of these small acts of courage is a state of psychological sovereignty. You no longer wake up with the heavy weight of the performance because you have nothing left to hide. You are not trying to be a perfect human being. You are simply trying to be a real one. The exhaustion fades as the friction between your inner world and your outer world disappears, replaced by a quiet and steady strength that does not depend on the weather of public opinion. Living with this new psychological shift means embracing the process of individuation, the journey of becoming the unique individual you were always meant to be. It is a path that requires you to move beyond the duality of the mask and the shadow, integrating both into a single, cohesive identity. You become a person who is capable of navigating the world with grace, but who also possesses a core of steel that cannot be moved by the winds of social trends. He realized that fitting in was a form of slow-motion suicide, and that the only way to truly belong in the world is to first belong to yourself. As Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. By taking ownership of your shadow and dismantling your persona, you are taking the reins of your own destiny. You are no longer an architect of your own prison. You are the architect of a life that is deep, dangerous, and brilliantly alive. The final echo of this journey is the realization that the mask was never yours to begin with, but merely a costume you were told to wear. Now that you have felt the weight of it and understood the cost of its maintenance, you have the power to decide when to use it and when to cast it aside. Sovereignty is not about the absence of a persona, but about the conscious control over it. You are the master of the image, not its servant. The truth is cold and liberating. The world does not need more polite ghosts. It needs men and women who are fully present and unapologetically real. As you walk back into the light of your daily life, remember that every moment of silence where you should have spoken is a brick in the wall of your own cell. Choose the truth over the harmony and the soul over the crowd. If you have found value in this dissection of the self, subscribe to this channel and continue the search for the depth beneath the surface. The path is difficult, but it is the only one that leads home.